Well, welcome everyone. Today we have Dominique Henderson here. He's a certified financial planner and founder of DJH Capital Management. That's a fee-based investment advisory firm in Texas, specializing in comprehensive financial planning. He's also the founder of the Jumpstart Coaching Lab, where he teaches other people to become better financial advisors as well. Dominique, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. Happy Wednesday to you.
Same to you.
Yeah.
Well, today I wanted to do a deeper dive into kind of the reverse mortgage world. It can be a hot topic for a variety of reasons, as we all know. And I really wanted to get a financial planner's perspective on this because a lot of the times you really see advice and marketing coming from somebody like me on the mortgage side, where obviously there's some bias involved. There's some conflicts of interest involved as well. So definitely wanted to get a third party's take on that. So what sort of experience do you have kind of in that reverse mortgage world at this point?
Yeah, I'll be really frank. I took my CFP exam in 2016, and my recollection is there was no information in there about reverse mortgage. There's no incorporation, at least that I know of at this point, in the training that I received as a certified financial planner to allow this to be a tool, even, or an option for financial planners. And I think that's kind of to the client's detriment, because when people come to me for solutions, which is essentially what they're coming for, they need, I feel, the entire gamut of what's available, right? So,
Right.
And then we can make an intelligent decision about what's out there. And I think, maybe when reverse mortgages first came about, there was some, let's say some unsavory characters in the mix, as there always is with everything. And some of this got a bad rap about, let's say predatory lending, more or less. So
Yeah.
I actually look at things a lot more holistically now and from different perspectives, because what I've realized is, yes, I am a financial planner. Yes, I'm a financial professional that helps clients. But at the end of the day, it's their money. It's their life. It's what they want to do. And I'm just giving them options. And so I think it's well within, my professional responsibility to make sure I'm up to date and apprised of all the options that can be out there for them. And so when it comes to something like reverse mortgage, I think personally and professionally, it is one of the better ways to monetize your equity. What do I mean by that? Well, you're living in a house and it's going up in value over time, and you're paying down the mortgage. So you got this big, slice of equity that you can't do anything with unless you get out of the house and sell it.
Right.
And so it becomes like this dead, like it's fun to look at on the balance sheet, but like, how could I use it? And when clients start to come to me and they say, hey, Dom, I need X amount of income, or I need access to capital, or whatever, I think this is an excellent tool. So that's kind of where I see it.
Yeah, no, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it did have, and still to some degree, there's always going to be some bad apples in the industry where it creates that conflict of interest. There's, in the past, it certainly was more prevalent. I think there's a lot more restrictions in place now to prevent a lot of those issues. There's a lot of equity capping, basically, where they have, you can't take out nearly as much equity as people expect you to be able to. When it comes to reverses. And then the big thing are, just, people kind of abusing it and putting people into that situation that maybe had another alternative, or had some other potential, better option than the reverse in some cases. I guess, what other alternatives do you kind of think of on the financial planning side as you're going through that with somebody that's obviously, it usually applies to 62 and above. So somebody that's in that kind of retirement stage, maybe they're working, maybe they have some sort of income, maybe they don't. What other alternatives kind of do you consider as part of, another alternative for reverse at that point? I mean, I usually see like HELOCs as a potential option. Are there other things that you consider besides that?
Yeah, I try to consider everything. I know it just really depends on the situation. I'm thinking about a case that I have right now where the woman is at a point where she would like to retire, and doesn't really enjoy what she does any longer. But at the same time, she hasn't accumulated enough other assets in her portfolio, through retirement plans and all this other kind of stuff that would supplement, another 20, 25 years of living. So
Right.
when we start to think about, hey, well, here are the things that we can do. We can make sure that there is let's say, a floor on your losses with all the stuff that you still have exposure to in the market, because we do want that to grow, but we don't want to, you to pull the trigger on retirement and then 2008 happens, because that's going to be unfortunate. So that's when I start to look at alternative avenues, and just be quite frank, sometimes this is one of the last options if you haven't accumulated enough in retirement assets that people start to look at, because it is their home, right? And it's probably one of the things that people think about less, I would say, on average. They don't even think about the equity in their home. But coupled with that, you're asking about alternatives. I would say, prepare to probably continue to work, right? Maybe not at the same type of job that's stressing you out with all the anxiety and everything else that you're trying to get away from, but something that you can do that maybe that is a passion project that could bring you a little income. So those are the things that I try to couple with this situation. I'm thinking about her particular instance, and she's fine to do that. So really, it just comes down to walking through these recommendations with clients, talking to them about what they want to do. And at the end of the day, Adam, I really, really, really am a big believer of, okay, so what is it that you want to do? Giving people the liberty and the license, the margin, if you will, to kind of like, hey, if money wasn't an object, what would you find yourself doing? And then starting there,
Right.
building all these tools around it to kind of, it's almost like they're in a castle, and we're trying to create a moat around them to protect them from all the things that will come at them, whether it be, market losses or illness. There's a lot of things that can come into people's financial plan once they get to that age. So you're just really trying to build a moat. And I think, again, reverse mortgage is an excellent tool to kind of pull out of the tool shed and use to help build that moat.
When do you see it as kind of a non-starter? Like it's a bad idea. You shouldn't even consider it. It's just not something that even really should kind of fall into your realm of possibilities.
Well, I think about a psychographic when you say that. I think about a person that, gets to 62 or older and has had let's say a suboptimal choices that they've made their whole life in regards to saving and investing. And then this is kind of like a last resort. I kind of say we can plug it in. This would be my advice. We can probably plug it in, but it's not going to stop the problem. Like,
Right.
if we don't have a lifestyle change, or you don't have like a big windfall coming or something, like we've got to fix the gap on this literacy, education, knowledge deal that caused this, and that now we're having to use something like this and have no other recourse except for this. That's kind of when I would say, I don't want to do it, but at the end of the day, the client has the total call on that, and the final say on whether or not they want to move forward with it.
Right. No, I think that's a great topic to kind of go down, because I think that's what a lot of people, unfortunately, they get to that stage where it is kind of a last resort. Like they haven't saved enough. They're at the point where it's like, I don't have another alternative. So like, what do I do? So I guess before, and I agree, it's not ideal to obviously rely on something like this to kind of get you out of that trouble, because it's not, like I said, it's not fixing the root cause of the issues. So I guess, are there maybe quick steps or things that you maybe kind of focus on beforehand to kind of bridge that gap, I guess, to maybe eventually they might have to go down the path of the reverse to even have any sort of income to live off of if they don't have any savings? But what are the steps that you try to take before kind of relying on that last resort option? What steps do you take with that type of client that's kind of thinking through that mindset?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is got to have the conversation about them working longer.
Yeah.
It is, right? The way I like to break it down is like really simple is you've got human capital, which is your ability to perform tasks at a level that requires some type of financial remuneration. So financial capital, money.
Right.
Trade your human capital for financial capital. That financial capital, then you have the choices to go put it into several different types of assets to earn a return. If you don't do that part correctly for 62 years before we meet, like, I mean, I'm not a magician here. I mean,
Right.
what are we gonna do? Like we're trying to make up for a long time. So, one of them is like, hey, our conversation is we got to work. The other thing could be we don't do a reverse, but we actually sell the asset because you had too much house for the last 15 years anyway.
Right.
You're kind of cash poor, house rich type of deal. So maybe we sell the asset and we downsize. As hard as that may seem to be in this particular economy, I know real estate prices are coming down a little bit, but
right.
if you make that happen, maybe you move in with somebody or whatever. These are the harder decisions that you have to make. But like if you can, kind of sacrifice a little bit for the next, let's say 2, 3, 5 years, whatever that looks like, then we're gravy, right? Then we're gravy for a little bit. Like we get to do some of the things that you said you wanted to do. If we want, especially if you think about them in the long scheme of things, people are living longer, so they don't have any health issues. They're probably going to, have another 20, 25 years or something like that. The other thing that I do, and this is not a quick fix, this would be something that, hopefully if I'm working with, let's say someone in their late 40s, early 50s, and then, they're on the fringe, let's say right now, of maybe not having enough, if we project out some things. I love to use things like cash value life insurance because that gives you options. We have no penalties, no taxes on taking loans from that. So this is give you a little bit more tools to work with once they get to this. I would love to get to people before they get to this age because it's almost kind of unscramble the egg, to be quite honest and frank. It's not easy to do, and most of the human behavior is against doing the type of things that are kind of be like, oh, well, that's gonna really hurt if I do that. But it's like, well, I mean, don't have any choices here. So
I mean, I think that's the moral of the story is let's not get to a point where this is the only option. So like we need to do this ahead of time. And that's why, I always push heavy to get financial planners involved and, way earlier than before 62, because obviously, like you said, there's only so much you can do at that stage to really, to suddenly, magically create a better option. So, obviously that's not, the optional for everybody. Some people just get to that stage and they haven't done enough, or they haven't been able to do enough to save, and they just didn't have a financial planner to help them. But I think that's the best advice coming from this is let's not rely on just this one reverse mortgage option as the end all be all. Let's hopefully get to a point where you've saved enough and have other plans in place. If we can use the reverse as kind of a supplemental thing, great. Let's have that as an option, but not the only one. So
yeah, I mean, all your watchers and listeners have likely been to the dentist. We hope. If you haven't, you should start going, because what I'm about to say is going to apply to you. But I go to my dentist and they're just like, hey, I can tell you're not flossing. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And so this last talk, I don't know what it was. It's just like the way she brought the end result of me not flossing when I get into my 50s and 60s, if I have all my teeth at that point, then she's like, you're going to be spending a lot of money in this chair. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start flossing. So it's almost like that, because like once you get to 50 and 60 and you haven't flossed or haven't, had proper dental hygiene, they can replace your whole mouth, but like that's probably not what you want to do. It's going to be really expensive, and there's no other options. Because you neglected what you should have done for so many years. And so that's kind of how I look at financial planning. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of cases over the years, and some people come with unrealistic expectations about what can happen. Not overall, I think in the time period that they want is more so that, right? Overall, they know that working with a financial planner is going to better them, but then they're like, I want it to happen next week, or not week, but next year. Well, I thought this would be
Right.
happening next couple of years because the market's doing really well. It's like not so much. So this is all one of those things where just like compound interest works for money. It works for things that you do well, like habits, behaviors, and the reverse is true too. The compound interest on bad habits is it accumulates pretty big too. So yeah.
Right. No, I mean, I think that's perfect. So, I mean, obviously, preventative care is the moral of the story here. So let's get everybody hopefully in a better situation, and use this again not as a last resort, but as just plan C, plan D, so some kind of other option to bring to the table. Hopefully, you're not getting to 62 or 65 or 70, whatever, and then needing this and didn't plan on any of the other things in the 10, 15 years beforehand. And that's obviously one of the reasons why it's I see this a lot in the industry, where it's like you get specialists in the reverse side, but they don't do anything else. So you run into the issue of like, all right, I'm getting I'm sure very good advice on the reverse side from some of these people, but there's no other alternatives, there's no other consideration of other programs, there's no other thoughts beyond that. It's very kind of laser focused with blinders on,
Well,
and
and
there's
let's
just
double
so many
click on that for just a
alternatives.
second. Let's double
Yeah.
click on that for just a second. So the lady that I'm working with now, we started this process actually before rates jumped up, and so we've had. I would have to go back and look at the numbers, but at least 450 basis points change in rates since we started
Right.
this, which drastically changed the numbers. And then you go through the underwriting, which there may be repairs or set asides that need to happen and all this kind of stuff. And
Right.
so this is the reason why you want to have this as plan D, or like you said, plan C or D, because all these different things can happen and the numbers can change. And then you're like, whoa, it doesn't look as good as it used to look,
Right.
when we start working on this. And it's like, yeah, I know these kind of things change. Like there's so many things out of our control, interest rates, like, I can't control that. Like I'm not an inspector or an engineer, so I can't do a report on your house. So all this kind of stuff starts to pop up, and obviously clients can get kind of antsy about that. But again, it's like if this was not option one or option two, this wouldn't be such a big problem right now. And luckily with her, it's not. But I can see how that would be a problem. It just puts pressure on the whole situation. You start to cut corners, and all this other kind of stuff. So it's not. Again, it should be a part of a comprehensive plan that's looking at everything and evaluating all those choices individually, as well as how they work together, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah. I mean, again, if you don't treat it as one scenario. Let's look at it from a holistic view, make sure that fits. Let's go through several different options and see if this one does work better, or at least supplemental to some of the other options. I think that's the key. Is let's not get laser focused on one option, because it might not be the only or the best option for you. So
Yep.
I guess if for the situations where we do find out that really it is the best option, are there things that you've kind of advised your clients, I guess, to ask in situations like that, or to kind of be cognizant of when they're thinking about getting a reverse mortgage? Because obviously there's potential issues. Obviously, conflict of interest comes into play. Like, are there things that you kind of hopefully advised to kind of watch out for when somebody's going through that process, to think about which lender they're going through, or what type of reverse, things like that?
Yeah, I think so. I have the type of practice where I'm handholding my clients through advice that does not come directly from me. And there's a couple of reasons why I do that. The first is, just to be quite honest and selfish, my reputational capital is on the line. So
Correct.
I'm not going to refer someone off to some, I'm not going to tell them about Adam if I don't know about Adam. I haven't talked to Adam, all this kind of stuff. I just don't feel comfortable with that. I think a lot of advisors are probably that way. I even do this with, tax professionals and whatnot, estate planning professionals, all that. So that's the very first thing. I think it helps to have, some education around it. Granted, it's not this the goal is, as a financial professional like myself, is not to know about everything. It's to build up a network so that if you don't have expertise in an area, or you can't fulfill a particular deliverable, like, write a reverse mortgage, then you have those type of people in your network that you can send clients to. And I like to be on the calls, so when we're talking to the specialist and they're walking things through, because usually the client's not that educated. I've maybe given them like a 30,000 foot view of something, but the intricate details of how things work and what they're responsible for, and how, clients have a bunch of questions. I like to be on those calls. I like to be on those calls as a listening ear, as a kind of a support, just in the background, making sure that if the client does have any questions, or they're uncomfortable with asking certain types of questions, that I step in, right? And make sure that, there's clarity going around. To me, that's been a big help. The clients have said they at least appreciate that. They feel like, they're not going into this alone, because let's be real. Sometimes clients just don't know what to ask.
Right.
And we, as specialists in our field of financial planning, or, mortgages, lending, all this kind of stuff, like, we know the vernacular, and we're just going through it all day. And so we gloss over a lot of things that people would normally probably ask questions about. So since they're building trust with, let's say, a reverse mortgage specialist, but they already have trust with me, for me to insert myself into that conversation is usually the best method of kind of making sure that everybody's on the same page.
Perfect. No, I think it's great advice. I mean, and I think having that extra person in the room or on the call, whatever, is a huge help, even for somebody like me, just because, like you said, we go through this, we're so used to the jargon, we're so used to kind of going through this process, and it's almost, it's so repetitive that you sometimes lose track of, like, all right, what other questions could somebody possibly have? And you just don't think about some of those things. Not in a malicious or predatory way. It's just, and that happens sometimes, obviously, for certain lenders, but in a lot of cases, it's just you don't know what questions people, you don't know what their information that they need. But
and simple
no,
stuff, like, right, like,
yeah,
okay, so wait, how does a reverse mortgage work? Like, I'm no longer paying a note, but there's still a lien on my house. Like,
right,
people are still trying, like, they're just trying to wrap their head around, like, how that actually works. And to have people walk through it, I can bring home money at closing. Oh, I don't have to pay another mortgage. Oh, and I have access to this pool of capital later afterwards that I can use kind of as a line of credit. Okay, but what happens if we want to keep the house? What happens that, all these different questions that people have because of how conventional finance has talked about, like, really one way of this transaction working, where
right.
the bank pretty much owns the house and you pay them payments until you pay it off, versus the reverse of that. So
It really is completely separate, and it's just a whole different animal altogether. So, I mean, I don't blame people for having the questions, for sure. It's definitely a different thing to get your head wrapped around. So, I definitely like the advice. I would certainly advise anybody considering it to have a financial planner. I mean, I think everybody should probably have a financial planner in most cases, is certainly if you're getting to that stage, 10, 15, 20 years before you get to a point where you're thinking about a reverse mortgage, let's nip it at the bud and then try to figure out better options ahead of time. But if we get to that point, definitely have a trusted advisor like yourself, like a financial planner, anybody that can sit in the room, have those conversations, have us explain that too, because obviously if you're not getting the answers that, the mortgage, the reverse specialist is giving, if you're not understanding them, the majority of the clients are not going to understand, obviously. So, we want to make sure every party is obviously on board. So,
yeah.
well, no, this has been super helpful. I guess before we kind of head off, anything else you wanted to touch on? Any other topics you wanted to go through?
Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting point. The very last thing you said about everybody having a financial advisor, and I know some people look at this and like, well, that's pretty self-serving to them because he's gonna maybe get a referral fee for Dom and stuff like that. And I think if people just kind of like separate the matter here, like, think about the whole wealth journey, right? No matter what that number is, everybody has a different number. So we're not really talking about the amount as much as we're talking about the specifics of the journey. It's relatively easy in the wealth accumulation phase. That part is easy. That's the simple part. Just
Right.
don't pay any stupid tax on stuff. Live beneath your means. try to save as much as you can. And for what you have going out, make sure you have more coming in. That's the best advice that anybody can kind of give you. And I'll be honest, you might not need a financial professional at what I charge to tell you that. But I'll tell you, when you do need someone and you already want the relationship established, is in the wealth decumulation or the asset decumulation phase. Yep. Or when you're trying to figure out, should it be in a Roth, or should it be in my 401k, or should it be over here? You know, that kind of stuff. And then definitely with wealth transfer, because, you know, if you don't do it right, you might be sharing, you know, your wealth 50-50 with Uncle Sam,
right.
Even beyond the grave, you know, how you like. So like those are the reasons why you want a financial professional and their network of people like Adam in the mix. Because as you build up these assets, I don't know who said this, like maybe it was Warren Buffett, but they said, it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. And so a lot of money starts going out the door in taxes and all these different costs because you just didn't know, and you didn't want to work with a professional because you thought you can do it your own, or you thought you can Google it, or all this other kind of stuff. Life, as you age, becomes more expensive with the mistakes you make because you just don't have as much time to recoup making a bad decision. So that's what I would offer people and leave with people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Perfect advice, for sure. So no, I think that's a big misconception with financial planning is they just look at it going, oh, it's just easy to pick some investments and that should be it. So I can do that without any help, but it's all the other stuff. It's the tax planning, it's the retirement planning, it's living after retirement, and like how you're going to actually maximize that. There's so much more that goes into it that I don't think a lot of people really fully understand. So and that's what we'll go through in more detail on this show, hopefully, in a lot more episodes. So.
I look forward to it, and thank you for inviting me on once again.
Well, before we hop off, Dominique, where can people find you if they would like to get more information on the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Real easy. Dom Henderson, DOM Henderson SR.com, senior, because I do have a junior in my lineage. So domhendersonsenior.com. You just do the abbreviation SR.com, and you can go there and see all the stuff that I do. The YouTube channel, the podcast, the blog, all that kind of stuff is all in one spot for people.
Nice. And I'll make sure to post the link in the description as well. So if anybody's curious, definitely click that out, check them out. Well, Dom, it's been great. I've really appreciated the help.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Take care.